I need to wait for everyone else before we start. Trời yêu thầy quá, em muốn đi toilet nãy giờ.
Em muốn cà phê vậy rồi em nói rồi em đau buồn. Không ơi, chồng nó cười đó. Trời ơi, nó cười cái nó thách của bạn. Thêm con nhỏ này nữa. Cái mãi nó có to gia đình là số 1 luôn. Cái cáo nhỏ Di Di gì phải không? Di Di thì số 1, cái nó kêu Di Di trong gia đình là số 1.
Hay đứng đây dễ hơn nữa. Kệ sao đâu, nhưng mà ý là đứng đây dễ hơn.
Thầy nhìn cái đi.
are living in the time where the weather forecast is like tell us of how not just like how to change the clothes or something like that, but actually it affects to the economy directly. So we will like our studies about like global temperature change and consumer expectation by Dimitri Georgakos at the latest research in 2025. So let's dive in. So before we start, so let's see the motivation of the paper. So this is about climate change becoming more realistic. In 2024 was recorded as hottest year in Europe history, and the extreme weather that disrupt the supply chain and also rise up the food and energy prices. And this to the central bank is the worry about inflation persistent and expectation and growing. And the key major gap here, so like do household in also like climate change to their inflation expectation. You already know them all. And for the research question, so does global warming chargely affect household inflation expectation and macroeconomic beliefs? So this distinction is vital. So if the answer is yes, that's mean climate change become an expectation channel of inflation. And here so how the author like gather the data and they what projection they do for the research. So they use the ECB consumer expectation surveys. So that is covering 19,000 households per monthly across in like 11 Europe countries. And the key here is they use the identification strategy with the oxygen, we all know about that. So they separate the into like the control group and the treatment. So as you can see here, so the control group which not change much in the Celsius, and the treatment one had like raised in level 5 degrees and treatment to 1.5 Celsius raising, and the last one is extremely increase in more than 2 degrees, and so before we go to the interpretation of the data, so we can see that the majority of the respondents here, like they react to the changes in the temperature, right? So with and you can see the 1/3 of the respondents. So they expect more than 1 point and on extreme weather changing, temperature changing, and yeah. So let's see the data telling us about. So I want to invite this one to integrate it.
So as the mentioned, this is the randomized survey experiment, and there are multiple temperatures treatment here. We just want to explain through the main result here. The first is the baseline regression. Here we focus on the coefficient beta 1, beta 3, beta 4. It's coefficient of the different scenario about the temperature, and the analysis consider two specification, two complementary outcomes. The first is the autologous regression. That is
reports the average marginal effects on the probability that the household expect to the price to increase. And the next is the OLS specification, focus on the level of the next 5 years inflation expectation, and it's measured the marginal of the level, the effects, by the percentage point. And as you can see here, the effect is economically meaningful, and it's noticeable for the S3 plus 0.5 plus 0.5 decrease scenario. It's increased the inflation expectation by about 0.65 percentage point, and another is plus 1.5 decrease. It raises to roughly 0.85 percentage point, and of course it's relative to the baseline inflation expectation around 2%. And this result consistent through the two specification result, and it implies that it's not only confirm the internal coherence of this experiment, but also show us that the climate change causally affect the inflation expectation through the expectation channel. And to identify the mechanism behind the main result, the author also estimate the effect through the channel specific regression. And here we can see on the left-hand side panel is decompose the inflation expectation by the price components. And if we saw here in the share of under the warmer temperature scenario, the household expect the higher food and energy prices, and while the expectation for other goods and services respond much lower. And for the right hand side panel, it reinforce this interpretation, and we can see here the households attribute the price increase to the higher roasting costs and the crop values, rather than the demand related factors or the firm markups. So it's consistent with the cost-driven transmission rather than the broader-based demand expansion. Then it also support taken all here, we can see that the climate change is perceived as a negative supply shock. So it supports for the observed result in the main recession about the increase in the inflation expectation. So for the next, beyond the inflation, the author also examine, control more for the author also want to examine whether the climate change affect the broader macroeconomic beliefs. And here, under the warmer temperature scenario, the household will expect the weaker economic activity, and higher employment, and the higher global debt and taxes. And the access market also adjusts consistently because the people expect a higher house price but the lower stock price. So here what we can see here is the climate change not just impact the inflation expectation but also the macro belief, and it's through the expectation channel. And they also control more about the knowledge, and I can see that stronger effect among the climate literary household. The household with the higher knowledge about the climate, they will report the higher inflation expectation rather than the less informed household. And this is also confirmed that the climate knowledge will amplify the belief updated and exported to the information-based inflation expectation channel, not just normal information. And that is just the economic beliefs. Now we turn to economic behavior, represented by Raymond right now.
Yeah, okay, so for this table, the setup is largely similar, but the topic of interest is changed slightly. So our topic of interest is the willingness to pay. So basically, it's just like a monetary measure of how people is willing to pay under different climate outcome. So what's interesting here in terms of the data, right, is most of the respondents, they reported zero willingness to pay. So even when, so that's why even when the author start with latent equations, which is on the left, top left, WTP star I is equal to alpha plus beta 1, so on and so forth, right? So what basically this equation is saying is the subscript I is correspond to each individual correspondent, and one S1 and one S3 and one S4 is corresponding to different kind of scenario. If you notice here, right, is the scenario 2 is the base, and which is missing from here. The reason is to avoid perfect collinearity. The vector x prime I is the vector of control factors for demographic and education. So the issue here is because a lot of the correspondents, they report zero willingness to pay, even though maybe actually the latent, like the actual belief is to pay negative or very little, we still observe it to be zero, right? So from an econometric standpoint, it's called upon the two type of a model that is presented in this table over here. The probic and the topic one. The probic corresponds to whether someone will be paying or not, and the topic responding to once they paying, then how much they will be paying as a percentage of the income, which is a second big column, and also paid in terms of the euros, dollars, which is the last column on the far right, hopefully that you can see. There's 6 columns here corresponding from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? Which corresponding to 1 and 2 corresponding to the profit. And why there's 2 columns per model that we use? Because in one group we have larger number of observation. They receive no actual information. The other group is receiving information regarding the climate knowledge. That is why we don't have the result here and there. So as usual, for probit and tobit, the way we interpret the data will be slightly different. We need to rely on the average marginal effects, because otherwise the coefficient, we will have a lot of coefficients corresponding to each of the subscript I here, right? So on the top of the table, we can see the average marginal effect for the probit is 0.66, for the tobit is 0.02 and 50.55, meaning 60% of the of the correspondent participation, right? They expect they will be pay more, and also how much will when taking into that sensor at zero mass, right? Then that amount will be accounted to roughly about 2% of their income, and also roughly about 50.55 euros. So for the rest of the table, the regression break down into different blocks. So for the first block, when we compare across different scenarios, right, S1, S3, and S4, we can roughly see, hopefully you can see, is for the scenario of interest, S3 and S4, which is presenting global warming, right? It is significant. Then moving to the next block, when we examine the kind of like different social belief of the people, we have high trust in people, high climate knowledge, a high climate change person. So we also can observe that it is positive and significant. To the next block, when we examine different age group, then over here we can see that the result is also significant but negative. So older corresponding maybe less likely to pay, and also they pay less. To the next block, when you take into account, different level of education, women and household size, over here we can see that for women, the result is kind of mixed, meaning they are likely to pay more, but the amount when they actually pay is less. Then when we talk about too small, different income range. Yeah, for when scroll down. Scroll down. So when we look at the hand to mouth portion and also different parts, scroll down please. Yeah. We have different hand to mouth and also different income range, right? What's interesting here to see is like for actually like the level of liquidity constraint for the people for the hand to mouth is kind of be some factor for consideration. Maybe people are willing to pay, but whether they are constrained in terms of liquidity or not may also play a role. And this is kind of consistent when we look at the result for different kind of income range. And so just to quickly recap over here we have two major hypotheses, whether the result is symmetry and whether it's monotonicity. So overall the p-value is kind of large, so we fail to reject most of the result. The only cases whereby it's at the bottom line is here at 0.06. So overall the result in this table is a symmetry, and it's for this condition, what it's saying is people do react for whether it's for warminger condition, but they cannot really distinguish whether the change is at the moderate or large level. Next one, please. So just to bring everything together for the policy implication, we can say that climate change can really de-anchor inflation expectation. And this may create new challenge for the ECB communications, and it would require coordination of monetary and fiscal policy. Next slide, please. So and why this paper matters is because it's introduced expectation channel of climate change, and it shows climate change can destabilize inflation anchoring, and it's also important for ECB communication and policy coordination. Final comment and the limitation is this working paper focusing on expectation, not realized behavior. So the scenario-based design may limit long-run external validity, and there's no explicit modeling of policy feedback responses. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Any comment, question from the class? So this is a very new topic compared with the first two presentations. We look at the household macroeconomic uncertainty or firms' uncertainty about the behavior. But this paper we look at the impacts of temperature or climate change on households' macro expectation, inflation expectation, but also other macro expectation, and doing it to deal with climate change. So, question from class. When we compare with standard structure of the RCT or survey experiment, what is consistent with our standard structure with this one. Or maybe the first group, the group number 3 can explain what's different from the standard structure of our RCT with the prior period, and then we have information treatment, and then we measure post period again to see how people update after the treatment, right? But this paper, they follow the same structure, or they use a different strategy to measure the impact of climate change on household expectation.
First, I realized that at the beginning here, because our lecture is mentioned about the right area and the post treatment, but here just only, and you can see clearly it's just the post treatment, and not clear about the right area treatment, the area we set the
The prior period,
yeah.
they have no information
Yeah.
about how people believe before they provide the information, right?
And here we have the two opposite group, and yeah, two opposite group here. Two opposite group here, and we also mentioned that what also have the group for the extra non-linear test, but we didn't show the result here for
Yeah, so T1 is a scenario 1, right? T2 is scenario 2, and response is scenario 3, and each has
here
yes,
yeah, another the control group here also have the value of temperature, but it's implied that the need no change for control group.
Yeah.
It's just my recommendation.
Any other comments from the other about strategy? You think that this strategy is clearly so called the effect of temperatures on macroeconomic expectation? Any concerns about the results?
I just wonder, like, the base is the S2, it's not 0, maybe they don't want to have the 0 value, because like when they calculate it, cannot do something with it, so they use like very small amount, just 0.01 degree Celsius.
And then when you reading this paper, you know where they put the information at the very beginning of the survey or at the end of the survey. Any information about papers, where they put the survey, and where they put the information of the scenario at the beginning or its middle of the paper, or it was unclear, right? So this paper I also feel a little bit unclear about this point, because generally they also be they have the measurement of all the macroeconomic expectation at the cross survey, and then they provide some hypothetical scenarios, and then they measure the outcome variable again, but it's unclear in the paper.
And one more thing that I might the scenario is not consistent also.
Yeah, that's the point as well. And the difference between this paper and the standard RCT also the explain, but we just look at the first two paper in our group, in our presentation, is that this one they use a hypothetical scenario. And in that paper, they provide the truth information about how professional forecasters believe about the future economy, or professional forecaster about inflation, or we provide some actual inflation rate, right? So that is the truth information about the state of the economy.
Yeah.
But here they provide some different scenarios to different group of the household.
Yeah.
And then they want to see the hypothetical scenario here, how it changes people believe. If the hypothetical scenario is turned out to be true. So it also depends on how much people believe in this hypothetical scenario as well, right? So it is based on the hypothetical scenario, so that's why we also can find out the Jubilee rate here will be potentially is less strong as the truth information we provide. So in this case, that's why the hypothetical scenario is often have some concerns in relation. Of course, it still shows some cause effect if they look at different hypothetical scenario, they still can change their belief or they update the belief, but the magnitude and the credibility of the result will be less than compared with the standard structure of the survey experiment where we provide the truth information. That also different in terms of methodology.
Yeah.
But it's still useful. It's not like a kind of doing this, but it's still useful and important approach as well. So that's why I asked you to present this paper so that we can discuss about another approach to study surveys and to do the survey experiment. And in many cases, in the reality, it's very hard to give some actual information on inflation or the information about forecast about the future. So that's why we could provide some information about hypothetical scenario. For example, what if some scenarios happen? Like, for example, if you have a month of income, pictures, for example, how much you will spend from 1,000 euro or for 1 month of income orders, and how to divide that time income to different spending or saving or credit repayment, for example. So in that case, we have to use the hypothetical scenario. And in this case, they use for the temperature. And that's why sometimes these are quite hard to interpret, but it's still meaningful because it's based on some condition that is automatically correct. And one more difference between this paper and the first two paper is that the first two paper is a public paper. They already go through a lot of conference and comment and feedback from the referees, and that is the final version. And this one is the first version, the first one of their work. So it means one day when it gets accepted, it will be changed quite a lot from the version we read today. There may be some comments and some unclear in the paper, for example, when they provide the information, for example, when they speak the sample, it will be more clear or clearer in the future. Some of our comments here that we try to fix, and when they submit the paper to the journal, they also get a lot of feedback from the referees, and then they will change the paper and update the paper. So next year or next 2 years, when we read this paper again in the public version, we will see a lot of things on this change. Maybe the core idea is still the same, but the way they present the paper and the write paper will be changed quite a lot. Maybe clearer or shorter, for example, because maybe a lot of things are different things are, for example, when they talk about the mechanism, for example, but we can see that it's not really clearly whether it's a mechanism going to the macro expectation or stock price, how it really put inflation expectation, right? So, and maybe the referee, we ask them to provide some probability check to see whether it's clearly that the channel from the temperature to each person is going to some channel like stock market expectation or personal or other macroeconomic expectation. Yeah, but it's also very powerful paper at the moment because they also one of the first working on the topic of climate change and how it links with macro expectation from the household's perspective. And also one more result I think is also very important is about willingness to pay to deal with climate change. And you also present very detailed about that, and I really appreciate that you explain in detail about the tables, with not only about the chicken effect, but also the demographic effect, so that we can see who are more likely to pay and willing to pay to build climate change. But here, it's something had to link with as a result, for example, how the chicken effect affect the inflation, link with the willingness to pay, willingness to pay for climate change, right? For example, if they estimate the impact of inflation expectation on the willingness to pay for climate change, for example, so the paper will be more committed and come back, right? So that they can link from the how people choose to live, how the inflation will to pay for climate change, right? Or whether those who suffer more by climate change, which information they provide, they are more likely or more willing to pay for climate change. So it's not about the demographic impacts on the willingness to pay for climate change, but the impact of the information we provide on how people form expectation and the willingness to pay for climate change. So that's something we still can ask the author to improve the paper. But here, as I said, it's the first version of their book, so they will test the referee to see what is the comment from the referee, and then they will update the paper, I believe, in the future very soon. Yeah, and just one more thing regarding to the presentation. Yeah, that is the time is still for the 15 minutes, so you have to review it in exactly 18 minutes. So it means that to just highlight some key results and a few points regarding more detailed results that we can discuss after the presentation. So that is a trick that we can make in the real presentation in academic conference when they assign people exactly 20 minutes for example, or 15 minutes or 25 minutes. You have to follow the rule. But in our class, it's fine. It's for our practice and gain experience and we learn from each other. But thanks very much for the very detailed and clear presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
So now time for lunch. We have a 1 hour break for the lunch, and then we start again at
1:30.